morning, guys. Figured I'd jump on for a super casual chat this morning. I don't know what it's like where you all are, but Toronto has gotten so much snow. The accumulation at this point, I don't even know how much it totaled. It just snowed for like the last 48 hours straight. So it finally stopped. Things are good. It's our holiday Monday, but I have been housebound all weekend. I have not been able to drive. I live on like a side street and it's not plowed, it's not cleared, and there's like 2 feet of snow in the street. So like I've been stuck at home. Lexi and I have been chilling. Hopefully the worst is over. I say that and then I'm like, you know, Canadians know better than to say things like that. Anyway, alas, I wanted to jump on this morning and chat about something I've been thinking about for a while, and I think it's just like, it's one of those things that really grates on me about typical personal finance advice, because I feel like it just doesn't at all capture or represent what regular people are going through, certainly not what regular people are going through in 2025, and the cost of living crisis that has just continued to amplify, and just how hard it is to be low income, how hard it is to be poor. Poverty is not a choice, right? Like that's why once you are poor, or if you are born poor, it's incredibly difficult to extricate yourself from that situation and mobilize yourself up a step. And personal finance advice acts like it's not. It acts like all of this is just a choice or just a series of choices, and that poor people are just making the wrong ones. And none of it acknowledges the reality of how difficult it is day to day being low income. And I never grew up in poverty, to be clear. I'm very lucky. So while I've definitely had stretches in my life where I've been broke, like pretty broke, I've always had something of a safety net, where I live in a country that I think has more of a social safety net. And my family situation has always been such that I've had, you know, a place to land if things really went sideways or things really went poorly. Not really like a financial safety net, but certainly like I wouldn't end up homeless kind of safety net. Like I do have like siblings and a parent that I can lean on. But it's interesting because even those stretches where I was low income, you know, for most of my 20s, I never made more than 50K a year. Like, and I remember when I was right at the end of my 20s. I think I had like turned 29. I got a new job and I was making like 52K a year. And I was like, I've made it. This is so much money. I'm killing it. And, quickly realized that you know, didn't go as far as I thought, especially because I had like mountains of student loans I was paying off. I was living in a pretty big city, but I could make it work. And that was by far like the most I'd ever made. Most of my 20s, I was making like 10K a year, 15K a year maybe as a student in undergrad. And then I went back for my graduate degree later in my 20s. So when I was 27, 28, I was back to making like 10K a year, 15K a year. What I reflect upon in that time is that like it was just so hard to be good with money. And not just because of the sheer shortage of it, although that was a huge problem. Like the problem for a lot of people is that they just don't make enough money. Someone making $12 an hour doesn't earn enough money, period. And that's not their fault. Like perhaps we just shouldn't pay people $12 an hour, you know what I mean? But yeah, what became really clear to me during that time is like, it's not even just so much about the fact that I was earning so little, although that is definitely a big part of it. It was the fact that I was earning so little and I knew that. And it made me not want to look at my finances because I knew what I would find. I knew that I would sit down and realize really quickly that I needed to go into debt every month to be able to afford my rent and bills and groceries, which is true. Like, and that's like, I wasn't stupid. I knew I didn't earn enough. That was pretty clear to me. You know what I mean? And like, that's the thing. That's the situation for a lot of people. Like, I don't live in the US anymore, but the median income in America is like, it's not great. It's not very high. There are lots of people making 30K a year. And that's just not enough. I just think it's completely unethical and wrong that we pay people so little and that such large swaths of the population have to live on so little. And personal finance advice was being like, make a budget, track your spending. Like, okay, they're gonna do that and realize that they just don't earn enough money. And then I guess like that's a first step of being like, okay, I don't earn enough, so like how can I deal with that? But even that, like, it just completely neglects how hard and stressful it is to be low income, like how hard it is to think that way when you are so stuck in the cycle of like day to day, of just trying to get through the day, just trying to get through the week, just trying to get to the end of the month, figuring out how you're gonna like pay your rent and then pay this bill and then buy food for that week. And like, it's really hard to sit down and be like, how can I make an extra 10K a year? Like, that's the kind of thinking that's really easy to do when you've already achieved a certain level of stability. And that's why I wanted to talk about this today, because like, it's so crazy that now, making way more money than I did a decade ago or whenever that was, I have so much more room for error in my budget, like because I earn more. So like, I just don't need to be as responsible or as careful. Like there's just more wiggle room. And it's way easier for me to be better with money now just because of privilege. Because like being poor is really expensive. I'm in a situation now where my life is stable enough, where I earn enough that I can do things like buy in bulk and take advantage of economies of scale. And like sort of, like I'm a single person, so I don't really like do that a ton, but like I still like, if I see something on sale, I can like stock up on it if I want to. My credit score is excellent because I think it's the snow plows going around. It's like, that is really loud. I don't know if you can hear it. I'm gonna wait for them to pass. Oh my gosh, I think they plowed my street, hooray. But then it's things like, I have an excellent credit score. Again, that's not because I'm special, it's because I'm lucky and I've like worked hard, but largely like I'm lucky. And so I make enough to pay my bills and to pay my bills on time. And so now I have a really good credit score, which makes it easier for me to rent an apartment and borrow money at a cheaper interest rate and all kinds of things like that. And like, just like being poor is incredibly punitive, right? Like once you're stuck in that cycle, it's really hard to break out of those things because like you are going to have a lower credit score. You're not going to be able to take advantage of like lots of traditional money saving tactics, like just buy in bulk and like da. So that's the thing. Like now that I'm stable, I can do all those things. It's so much easier to be better with money, and it's so much easier to follow typical personal finance advice when you have already achieved like a level of stability. Like I work a white collar job that's fully remote. So I have the time now to like make sure that I'm canceling my subscriptions on time and to call my insurance company to negotiate, a better rate. That's the kind of stuff that like, if you're poor, it's incredibly difficult to have like the time and mental bandwidth and just like resources to do that. Because all of those things do take some energy and time and resources. They take like some of that mental attention, which if you are in a really precarious situation, like you probably just don't have. So it just, I don't know, it just feels like super unfair and extra cruel to try to like give that kind of advice to people where it's just like, okay, that's going to be very hard for them to action this. And it's probably in the grand scheme of things also not really going to move the needle all that much. Like poor people are already good at spending wisely, they're already good at budgeting. And even things like discretionary spending, my discretionary spending has probably gone down now than it was when I was like a broke grad student in my late 20s. Why? Because my life is way easier now. Because my life is way cushier. Because I don't have to leave the house to go to work. So buying lunch out or buying a coffee out, like I don't do that like ever, because I don't have to, because I work this cushy job. But that's not like me making smart financial decisions. That's just like luck. It's just privilege. That's all that is. So when I was a grad student, I was patching together like 4 or 5 different jobs at any given time. I was working at the Academic Writing Center on campus for $13 an hour. And then I was working as a door-to-door fundraiser. So at nights and weekends, I would go and knock on people's doors and canvass and ask them to donate money to charity. And then I was also tutoring high school and university students in biology and biochemistry. And so I was doing that as well. And the door-to-door canvassing, I was like, oh my gosh, because that paid $16 an hour. And then my tutoring paid pretty well because I am a credentialed teacher. So I was making $25 an hour for that. But the hours for tutoring were way less. Like I could only tutor like 1 or 2 hours a week, right? Like you're limited by the number of students you can find who like want or need tutoring. So that was always kind of a limiting factor. And also I was like traveling all over Ottawa to tutor someone for like an hour. So it would take me like an hour to get there and back to work for 1 hour. Like it's the dollars and cents of it didn't really make sense. But again, that's I didn't have a choice. I needed that $25. So like, even though it didn't really make sense in terms of like the time it takes to like transport myself there, to pay for the bus to get there, to tutor someone for 1 hour and then turn around and go home, like that didn't make sense, but I didn't have a choice. Anyway, so I was doing all of that. And then, I was like TAing and RAing on campus, like as part of my grad student, package or whatever. I also got TA hours. So I was also doing that. And I was often doing like multiple of these things at once, at any given time, all while being like a full-time student and going to class and writing my thesis. And the thing is, living that kind of lifestyle meant that I was out of the house from like sometimes 6 or 7 a.m. until like 8 or 9 p.m. I was gone all day, every day. Maybe on like a Sunday I would be home. But for the most part, I would get up. I would hit the gym, I would hit the library, I would hit class, then I would have to work in the afternoons and evenings. So like sometimes I was able to pop home in the middle of the day, but often I was just out for like these long stretches of time. And you can talk all you want about like preparing and packing lunch, and I did all of that, and I was like pretty responsible, and I would make coffee at home and put it in my travel mug and do all of the things and bring granola bars and bring snacks and bring a piece of fruit and all the things that Caleb Hammer is always yelling at people to do. I was doing all of that, like maybe not perfectly, but like 80-90% of the time. Like I had pretty good habits around that, again, because I didn't make any money. So I didn't like have a ton of choices. So I did do that, and I would, even if I was going to get a coffee out, like I would bring my reusable travel mug so I could get the 10 cents off the coffee at Second Cup or whatever. And I would very strategically buy something at Tim's that was, like a donut or like a scone, because I'd be like, okay, that'll be like $1, something like that'll be cheap. It's not food, but it'll feed me and it'll give me calories for like $1. And like that was kind of the goal. So I was doing all of those things. It didn't matter. I was still spending more on coffee and food out at that point in my life than I probably am now, just because I was never home. And even with planning and stuff like that, even with trying to plan ahead, you're not, if you're gone 14 hours a day, it's really hard to be that level of planful to like, what were you going to do? Pack a cooler and carry it around with you? You know what I mean? Like there's only so much you can do. And I think I did what I could really well most of the time, but it doesn't matter. Like the reality is just like my life is so much easier now. It's not even funny. And so it's so much easier for me to make good financial decisions or to make responsible financial decisions. That has nothing to do with like how smart I am or anything like that. It just has to do with like privilege and just that my life is like pretty easy now. I don't know. And I just wish we could have some more empathy for people like living in the throes of that, rather than yelling at them and shaming them and making them feel stupid. You know what I mean? And like, this has always been a big part of why like Dave Ramsey, I can't. I don't think his advice is very good. And I can make a whole video about that. And he's helped lots of people, blah, blah. Yeah, lots of people have helped people without screaming at them or like shaming them. So I don't know why like that has become like a necessary part of personal finance. But anyway, I wish we could approach people with like a little bit more empathy and a little bit more understanding of like their actual experiences day to day, and being like, yeah, this is gonna be so much harder for you to do if you are not already at a certain level where you have like some kind of financial security already assured to you, or where you already have some kind of just basic ability to meet your needs. It's going to be way harder for you. And maybe there are like tools and strategy. I mean, again, I'm not like an expert in like poverty or anything like that. So I don't know. I wouldn't be the person to be able to make those kinds of recommendations. I'm not a financial advisor or a financial planner. Like, none of this ever is financial advice. So like, I would not be the right person to do that. But like, I'm sure there are some more practical, tactical things that you can offer up to low income people that aren't like just condescending, and like that are actually going to help people in that situation and actually help them claw their way out of the situation that they're in a more practical way. So I don't know. I just think, like make a budget. Wow. So I can realize that I'm like in the minuses, like by $1,000 every month. Yay. Thank you. Like, what is that? Like, what is that going to do for anyone? You know what I mean? And even with the discretionary expenses too. So even things like just like alcohol, cigarettes, things like that, is when you don't have any money, like those are sometimes the only things that are giving you joy, that are giving you pleasure, that are giving you happiness, right? It's like that, the easy dopamine hits. And you know, I was still smoking on and off during grad school. And man, it felt good. Like it was a really easy source of dopamine that I perhaps don't feel as inclined to participate in now, again, because my life is easier and I'm more stable. And so even that, I don't judge anyone who is poor or homeless, who is like partaking in whatever activities they need to partake in to like get by and get through the day and get through the week. Yeah, a lot of people on their high horse about that would be doing the exact same thing in that situation. But yeah, like, no, I don't judge anyone for anything, for any survival tactic that they need when they are living in this horrible late stage capitalist hellscape and they don't earn enough. Like, do what you need to do to get through the week, you know what I mean? But also to say, it's just so much harder to make all of those like really, you know, solid decisions across the board in all facets of your life when you're poor, when you're low income, because you're strapped all the time. I think it's the constant like fight or flight mode of it all, like that cortisol just coursing through your body all the time, that makes it really, and you just don't have time. Like you just don't have free time to like sit down and think and plan. And that's just been a major reflection now, finally in my late 30s, hitting a point where and even now, I'm like, I have no illusions about my situation. Like I'm still not in the best financial position. I just feel very lucky that I'm even in a situation where I can like pay my bills and save. I think that puts me in like probably a minority of people right now. And so I feel very like lucky that has happened, you know, by my late 30s, that I've attained some level of stability. And even that, I understand, is precarious. Like I don't think anyone right now should have blind faith as to like the stability of their employment or anything like that. And the reality is like we're all much closer to becoming homeless than we are to becoming wealthy. Like how long could you live without a paycheck? How long could you pay your rent without a paycheck? A month, a few months, maybe? Like that's most of us. So I have not lost sight of that at all. I'm just reflecting now that I have achieved some level of stability, how much easier it is now to then consequently make better financial decisions. And now it's like this domino effect, right? It's like this positive feedback loop where because things are good, I can like learn more about investing. I can save more. I can do, you know, more of these cost cutting measures and budget and do like low spend challenges. And like the thing is, it's more fun and enjoyable too, because I don't have to. And people who are low income have to. It's not a fucking game. you know? Like that's their life. And I'm privileged enough that I can do it and be like, yay, I saved $500 for the month. Like that's awesome. Very different stakes to be doing like a shop your pantry challenge or a low buy challenge or a no buy challenge, or to be doing anything when it's completely optional. You know you make enough money to buy the things that you want to buy and you're just like opting not to. It's way easier to do that than to be living under the true constant scarcity. And yeah, there just seems to be no acknowledgement of that, which I think is crazy. It's crazy for how many people, like the proportion of the population in, say, Canada and the US, that's just like, those are the places I'm most familiar with. The proportion of the population that is living on like not very much. It's wild that we don't have better resources and better personal finance advice for folks who are really dealing with much greater challenges than you need to just like cut out some fast food and like track your spending. I don't know. And ultimately, I just think some more empathy would go a long way. You know, a little bit of meeting people where they are and understanding that the situation that they are in is often not their fault. It's not their fault, but how can we work with them to help them better their situation? And also, like, let's not neglect that we all should be participating in like a bigger role in all of this, which is like in the labor movement, housing movement. You should be supporting increasing the minimum wage. You should be supporting these initiatives. You should be supporting people unionizing in their workplaces. Because like, that's the only way anything has ever improved for workers and working class people. So also, like, personal finance advice should be a little bit more, I think, comprehensive in terms of talking about like how we can actually improve things and not just putting all the responsibility on an individual, which is like a very capitalist thing to do, just to be like, well, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and figure out how to earn more money. And it's like, how about we just have a better society where some people don't have $200 billion and while like people are dirt poor? Like, how about we don't do that? How about we just stop doing that? You know what I mean? Anyway, so these are my grievances. I wish the personal finance community could just have like a little bit more empathy and do a better job of meeting low-income folks where they are, because I just don't think a lot of the personal finance advice out there is particularly helpful. And now that I am in a situation where I am a little bit more stable and I'm fortunate enough to earn more, like I can just see it clear as day how much easier it is for me to be responsible with my money now than it was back when I wasn't earning money. And that just feels so unfair. And so if you are struggling with that, or you have struggled with something like that, please let me know your experiences down in the comments, and I will see you on the next one.